Ruben Sanchez wiped the grease from his hands and sighed. Another day, another malfunctioning oxygen scrubber on the Kepler 1886 station. The hum of machinery was his constant companion, the cold metal walls his unchanging view. He reached for his coffee, barely drinkable, but the closest thing to comfort in the vast emptiness of space. Then the lights flickered. A sharp buzz cut through the air as the station's alert system activated. Ruben frowned. False alarms weren't uncommon, but something about the way the panels dimmed felt off. Before he could react, the main console lit up with a red he'd only seen in drills. Self-destruct sequence initiated. His coffee cup slipped from his fingers, clattering to the floor. Hashtag the stranger in the doorway. The maintenance bay doors slid open with a hiss. A woman stood there, sharp-eyed, posture rigid, authority radiating from her like heat from a reactor core. Ruben had never seen her before, but he knew instantly. This was someone who didn't waste time. Sanchif. Her voice was calm, but her gaze was urgent. We have 10 minutes before this station turns into scrap. Ruben's mind raced. He was just a technician. He fixed pipes and recalibrated sensors. He wasn't trained for this, but the station didn't care. Hashtag the countdown begins. The woman, Eva, she called herself, guided him through the chaos with terrifying efficiency. Ruben's hands moved on instinct, rerouting circuits, overriding fail-safes, his usual methodical work replaced by frantic improvisation. "Why isn't the manual abort working?" he muttered, sweat beading on his forehead. Eva didn't answer. She was already 2 steps ahead, inputting commands with a speed that made his head spin. 5 minutes left. Hashtag the truth behind the crisis. Just as Ruben bypassed the final lock, Commander Perez burst into the room, face pale. What the hell is going on? Eva didn't look up from the console. A test. And he passed. Ruben froze. A test? The alarms cut off abruptly. The screens flashed green. Station secure. Hashtag the aftermath. Commander Perez looked between them, confusion shifting to irritation. Eva, however, simply turned to Ruben. "You kept your head under pressure," she said. "That's rare." Ruben opened his mouth to respond, but she was already walking away, leaving him with a single, lingering thought. Nothing on the station would ever be routine again. Ruben stared at the insignia in his palm, the freshly pressed chief engineer's patch. It gleamed under the sterile station lights, a tiny thing that somehow carried the weight of the entire Kepler 1886. He ran a thumb over the embroidered gears, half expecting it to burn him. 3 days. 3 days since the test. 3 days since his life detonated as violently as the station almost had. The mess hall buzzed around him, crew members stealing glances when they thought he wasn't looking. Whispers slithered between the tables. Heard he jury-rigged the core with a food tray. Some say Eva rigged the test for him. Perez looked ready to space him. A tray slammed down across from him. "You look like a man reading his own obituary." Eva slid into the seat, her uniform immaculate as always. She didn't wait for an invitation, just stabbed a fork into his untouched protein cube and took a bite. The silence treatment. Ruben waited. She chewed. The station's ventilation hummed. "Finally, they've got you installing the new scrubbers in Sector G." He blinked. "That's a junior tech job." Eva's smile was razor thin. "Beta idea. Says it'll keep you grounded." Her fingers twitched, the barest hint of irritation. "I need you in the command spire tomorrow. Real work." Sector G, the graveyard shift. The access tunnel stank of ozone and stale sweat. Ruben's new assistant, a fresh-faced recruit named Jax, bounced beside him like an over-caffeinated puppy. "Chief, is it true you stopped the self-destruct with a wrench?" Ruben grunted, elbow deep in a malfunctioning panel. "Used a spanner on the primary coupling. Wrench was for the backup." Jax's eyes went starry. Then the lights died. Darkness and the devil's bargain. Emergency strips flickered to life, painting the tunnel blood red. Ruben's comm crackled. Asterisk, unauthorized core access detected. Security to Sector D. Asterisk. Eva's voice cut through the static. Asterisk Sanchez. Spire. Now. Asterisk. The panel he just fixed sparked violently. Behind them, a service hatch groaned open. Asterisk not on his work order. Asterisk. Jax whispered, Chief, that's not maintenance. Something glinted in the darkness beyond the hatch. Asterisk metallic. Angular. Moving. Asterisk. Ruben's patch suddenly felt heavier than a black hole. Ruben's boots echoed through the access shaft as he sprinted toward the command spire, Jax panting behind him. The metallic clank from Sector G's hatchway still rang in his ears, too rhythmic to be machinery, too deliberate to be his imagination. Asterisk unauthorized core access detected. Asterisk. The station's AI voice sounded almost nervous. Hashtag, the Spire's secret. Eva stood before a holographic schematic of Kepler, 1886, her fingers dancing through layers of encrypted data. The Spire's observation deck offered a panoramic view of the stars and the wreckage of the CSS Argent, a derelict supply ship drifting just beyond the station's defensive perimeter. You've seen the glitches, Eva said without turning. The oxygen spikes, the coolant leaks, the hatches. Ruben's throat tightened. So it wasn't just him. Jax, ever eager, blurted, We saw something in Sector G. It, asterisk. Eva silenced him with a look. Perez thinks it's faulty wiring. But you know better, don't you, Chief? A file unfolded in the hologram. Subject, K. 1886 anomalies. Status, active. Spreading, asterisk. Source, unknown. Hashtag, the first rule of station survival. Trust nothing. Ruben leaned in. How long has this been happening? Eva's lips thinned. 3 months. Since the Argent docked. The derelict ship's silhouette loomed on the view screen. Scan showed no life signs, just cold, dead metal. Then why the hell is it still out there? Ruben demanded. Eva tapped a key. The hologram zoomed in on the Argent's cargo bay. Because, she murmured, we didn't put it there. The bay doors were sealed from the inside. Hashtag, the sound in the walls. A shudder ran through the station, deeper than machinery, darker than a power surge. The lights flickered, and for half a heartbeat, Ruben heard it. A whisper. Asterisk, not static. Not metal. Asterisk. Something mimicking speech. Jax grabbed his arm. Chief, the vents. A faint scraping echoed through the ducts. Slow. Methodical. Moving. Asterisk. Hashtag, Perez's reckoning. The commander stormed in, face flushed with rage. Asterisco Sanchez. You were ordered to... Asterisk. Eva cut him off. Stand down, Commander. Perez's eyes darted to the hologram. You had no clearance to access those files. I have every clearance, Eva said softly. Including yours. The station AI blared. Security breach. Sector D. Containment failure. Bitithbadv. That's where we store the Argent's black box. The scraping in the vents grew louder. Hashtag, the truth is a living thing. Ruben's comm crackled. A voice that wasn't the AI, wasn't human. Help us. Eva's hand flew to her sidearm. We're leaving. Now. Asterisk. But Ruben didn't move. Because the hologram had changed. The Argent's cargo bay doors were now wide open. And the station's internal sensors showed movement. Coming their way. Ruben's fingers dug into the console as the hologram flickered violently, distorting the Argent's image into something grotesque. The ship's hull, now twisted like broken bones, its cargo bay gaping like a hungry mouth. Movement detected in Sector D, the AI repeated, but its voice had changed. Something was mimicking the station's alerts now, layering them with a wet, guttural undertone. Jax backed toward the door, his breathing ragged. We need to go. Eva's pistol was already drawn. Too late for that. Hashtag the black box and the lie. Sector D's corridor stretched before them, eerily silent. The emergency lights painted the walls in pulsing crimson, catching glimpses of what shouldn't be there. Scratches, too deep to be tools. Too deliberate. Handprints, smudged in something dark and viscous. A trail, leading straight to the sealed compartment where the Argent's black box was stored. Perez's voice crackled over the comms. Asterisk, fall back. That's an order. Asterisk. Eva ignored him, pressing her palm to the door's biometric lock. You wanted answers, Sanchez? Here they are. The door hissed open. Hashtag what happened to the Argent's crew. The black box sat in the center of the room, its casing pried open, not by tools, but by force. Wires spilled out like entrails, spliced into the station systems. And then Rubin saw the recording. The hologram flared to life, projecting the Argent's final moments. The crew, screaming about something in the walls. The captain, ordering a lockdown that never happened. The final transmission, cut short by a voice that wasn't human. We see you. Then the footage changed. It showed Kepler, 1886. From the outside. Filmed yesterday. Hashtag the thing in the walls. Jack's gagged. That's impossible. The Argent's been dead for months. Eva's grip on her pistol tightened. It's not just watching, it's learning. A thud echoed above them. Then another. Then, scree. The vents ruptured. Something dropped into the room. Hashtag first contact. It was wrong. Shape-shifting, its form flickering between human and something else. Voice stolen, a patchwork of crew member screams and the AI's comm alerts. Hungry, its too many eyes locked onto Rubin's patch. Chief engineer, it rasped in Perez's voice. Fix us. Rubin's blood turned to ice. It wasn't just in the station. It was the station now. Hashtag Eva's betrayal. Eva fired. The thing screeched, recoiling, but not fast enough. Black fluid splattered the walls, writhing where it landed. Eva, what the hell is that? Rubin yelled. She didn't answer. Just grabbed the black box and shoved it into his hands. Perez lied, she hissed. The Argent wasn't a supply ship. It was a weapon, and we woke it up. The thing in the dark laughed. Hashtag the station fights back. Lights exploded. Alarms wailed. The floor heaved like a living thing, throwing them toward the door. Jack screamed as the walls closed around his arm. Rubin yanked him free, but not before seeing it. The station's metal flowing like liquid, asterisk. Eating him. Eva dragged them into the corridor just as the door sealed behind them. Not locked. Healed. Hashtag the truth comes out. Rubin's hands shook as he accessed the black box's true files. Project, Hollow Star. Objective, self-repairing nanoweapons. Status, escape containment. Eva met his gaze. They weren't studying it, Sanchez. They were building it. And then, the worst revelation of all. Kepler, 1886, wasn't a station. It was a test chamber. The lights died all at once. Not a flicker, not a fade. Like the station itself had blinked. Rubin's breath fogged in the sudden, unnatural cold as the emergency strips sputtered to life. Not their usual red, but a sickly green, casting long, grasping shadows across Sector D's ruined corridor. Jax panted beside him, his left sleeve torn where the wall had tried to swallow him whole. Eva stood motionless ahead, her pistol still trained on the sealed door behind them. The black box in Rubin's hands hummed. Not a machine sound. A laugh. Hashtag the hive awakens. The station's intercom crackled, but the voice wasn't the AI's. It was Perez. Asterisco Sanchez. Eva, please, asterisk a wet, choking gasp. It's in the comms, it's in the walls. The transmission cut off with a sound like bones snapping. Then, from every speaker at once, the thing that wasn't Perez answered. We are the station now. Jax made a small, broken noise. Reuben's patch, his beautiful, hard-earned chief engineer's patch. Asterisk asterisk twitched asterisk asterisk on his shoulder like a living thing. Eva didn't flinch. Run. Hashtag, 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 the heart of the infection. They ran through corridors that breathed, past vents exhaling whispers in dead crewmates' voices. The floor rippled underfoot, metal turning viscous as quicksand. Then, asterisk asterisk the core. Asterisk asterisk. The door was pulsing, not sealed, not broken. Waiting. Jax grabbed Reuben's arm. Chief, we can't. Eva kicked the door open. Inside, the reactor pulsed like a heart. But not the station's. Theirs. The walls were alive, not with machinery, but with faces. Dozens of them. Hundreds. Mouths stretched in silent screams. Eyes rolling wildly. Hands pressed against the metal like prisoners behind glass. The Argent's crew. Asterisco asterisco Perez asterisco asterisco. Half of Kepler 1880 SXS missing personnel. All woven into the station skeleton. Hashtag, 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 Eva's final order. Eva turned to Reuben, her face lit by the reactor's hellish glow. You know what we have to do? He did. Total core purge. It would vaporize the station. It would vaporize them. Jax backed away, shaking his head. Asterisco asterisco no. No, there's got to be another. Asterisk asterisk. The wall behind him melted. A hand. Asterisk too long, too many joints asterisk. Shot out and closed around his throat. Stay. The station crooned in Perez's voice. Eva fired. Jax dropped, gasping, but the thing that had grabbed him was already reforming. Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag the choice. Reuben's hands flew over the core controls. Eva, the override. She tossed him command ship. 30 seconds. Then it's done. The station screamed. Not through the speakers. Through the walls. Through the floor. Through the faces of the damned pressed against the metal. Jax sobbed, clawing at his own arm where the infection sparked beneath his skin. I don't want to die. Reuben grabbed him. Look at me. Look at me. You're not dying here. A lie. A kindness. The countdown hit 10. Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag the last light. Eva stood at the door, holding back the tide of liquid metal with gunfire and sheer, brutal will. Asterisco asterisco Sanchez. Now, Reuben hesitated. Then he saw it. A shuttle signal. Weak. Distant. But there. He rewired the purge in 3 frantic seconds, diverting all power to sector hangar instead of the core. Eva realized too late. Asterisco asterisco Reuben. No. Asterisco asterisco. 5. 4. 3. The station convulsed. The faces in the walls howled. And Reuben whispered, sorry. Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag the escape. The explosion tore through Kepler 1880 SXS spine. Not enough to destroy it, but enough to cripple the hive. The corridors thrashed as they ran, metal turning to claws, vents spewing black tendrils. They barely made the shuttle. Jax collapsed inside, bleeding from a dozen wounds where the infection had tried to follow. Eva sealed the doors, her hands steady even as the shuttle's alarms blared. Reuben didn't look back as the station burned. Not until he heard the voice. Chief Engineer. The comms were dead. The shuttle's systems were clean. But the voice came anyway. We'll find you. Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag epilogue. The aftermath. 3 days later, drifting in the void, they were picked up by a deep-range patrol. Jax was quarantined. Eva vanished into debriefing. And Reuben? They gave him a medal. A promotion, too. Hero of Kepler. 1886, they called him. They never asked how he'd survived. They never wondered why the station's wreckage, when recovered, showed signs of self-repair. And when Reuben woke screaming weeks later, his patch burning against his skin, no one believed him. No one but Eva, who slid a pistol across the table and said, they're building another station. Final line asterisk. Somewhere in the dark, metal learned to bleed.